Okay, there now they have audio.
Oh, good.
They will know. Sorry for those of you out there. Just so you know, this episode of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast is sponsored by Easy Roller Dice. They have a new aluminum dice Kickstarter going on right now with an elven font design. Go to easyrollerdice.com/jacks. Jacks? Jacks.
Jacks. Because we're
Jacks.
Jacks. We're happy
Right, Happy
Jacks.
Jacks. Easyroller.com
So,
slash
yeah.
jacks. All right.
And use that URL because then we get credit for it and it
Yes.
supports the show.
There you go. Thank you very much. Okay. So we're talking about, for those of you listening live, I'll just reiterate very quickly. We got an email. This is from Nicholas playing Warhammer Fantasy RPG. They've got a skill called consume alcohol, which most of the careers have, and in a lot of cases you have to take it, and it's never been used. It's actually more common than basic melee or dodge, the skills for attacking or avoiding an attack. Every game has a fight in it, and every fight has a game in it. Obviously, the obvious solution is house ruling, but it's a lot of work when it's so deeply integrated into the game. We just started playing 4th edition, but the skill has been bugging me in previous editions, so we must be doing something wrong. I've not seen a fan-made career without consume alcohol. Am I wrong to want to get rid of this useless skill in a game when it is not meant to be fair or balanced? How can we make use of it? P.S. Alternatively, we've tried implementing alcohol more into the game, playing alcoholics, or at least use it to treat a panic attack before battling the eldritch horrors from the realm of chaos. P.P.S. To make it worse, the GM found a use for it. We pay extra for a night at the bar, and when the doctor needs to use anesthesia, he might have to use a little extra, so he charges us more for the increased dosage. PPPS, obligatory nonsensical conclusion of memorandum. So, a useless skill. Is it a useless skill?
I'm so conflicted. Like, my personal love of alcohol is like, I don't know if I can be like an unbiased judge of this question.
I think it's a skill for GMs to screw with their players more than anything else. It's like, oh, we're going to go into a bar. Okay, go into a bar. There's a skill specifically so I can screw with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that kind of makes me love it more, I think.
Right. I think it's because there's what is it, the carouse skill in Traveler.
Mm-hmm.
But the carouse skill is more general because it's also like it's the partying skill. It's the I'm gonna go out and meet people and try to convince them that I'm their friends, and maybe they'll tell me secrets and
Mm-hmm.
what that kind of thing. And but it's just weird that there's an actual skill called consume alcohol, and that you can get better at it.
I mean,
What does that mean? A very high level. Is it just your tolerance?
I would say it would probably be your tolerance, your ability to like if we were playing Bushi Bushi Bushi, like that's what you would roll
Right.
to see how well you did in that game.
Right.
Like if you are trying to drink someone else under the table, like that's what the skill you would roll for them.
Right. I mean, in most games, you just use like Constitution or Stamina or something like that to take the
Yeah.
place of it, or size or strength or something, depending if you're looking at body weight. But I don't know. I don't necessary, not necessary. I don't know. There's a lot of skills. I mean, shit. I come from GURPS. You know how many skills in GURPS never get used in a game? There's an account.
Stork, you're muted on okay.
There's a there's a
There's a thing on Zoom. No? Okay. So I think consume alcohol. I don't know. I like how specific it is. Like I think it depends on your campaign. Like if you have a campaign like us with Bushi Bushi Bushi, like that's a skill. Like we did that all the time, and we used it to our advantage
oh,
in our
that's true.
in our L5R game a bunch of times because we'd play it until people got drunk under the table and couldn't be a guard anymore and stuff like that. So I kind of like that it's not necessarily because like drinking isn't necessarily based on like there are like if you're factoring it in size and constitution or whatever you want. Like constitution I think would be the nearest thing to it, But if you're doing a game where you designed your own drinking games that you use to your advantage to get things done, like I feel like consume alcohol might be a useful skill to have. I don't know. I don't think it takes away from the game to have another skill. I mean, if you're putting points and stuff into it, I guess that would be your prerogative to do so.
I wonder if that's mostly the objective. If he's like, I could have put an extra point into dodge or into general melee or whatever the skill is called, or one of those things, and that's really what he's complaining about. Not the existence of the skill, the fact that you have to take it in many cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that does seem a little... I don't know. I mean, if it's something that it makes sense for your character, like with carouse, but also, I don't know. I don't hate it. I don't. I mean, if everyone at the table doesn't like it, then it's sort of like, that's dumb then. And like making people take it seems like a bad idea because there's definitely characters who wouldn't take that and wouldn't want that.
Sure.
So it's like my character, doesn't drink. It's like, okay, well, then you don't have that skill. But is more prominent than basic melee or dodge.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that makes sense, though. I mean, you're playing... that's the other thing. Every one of these player character concepts has an actual job outside of going around adventuring. Mm-hmm. Right? They have something else they do. So the fact that that they might be better at drinking than at fighting, to me, makes perfect sense. Farmers... merchants probably are going to be a lot better at drinking than they are going to be at fighting.
Yes, very true. And those people also probably wouldn't be putting as many points and stuff into like melee if you're a farmer. Right. So I can see, it'd be like, if you have a bard or if you have something like that, you're not necessarily an elite fighter, but you're able to I don't know, you're able to customize your character a little bit. I like everything that lets you customize your character more. So
right,
people
it's a shame that something that seems so trivial that's really added for flavor, you're forced to take. I mean, I get it if it's just an option kind of thing, but like in Vampire you can sort of point by, but you're forced to take it and spend points on it kind of seems sucky. It's like buying a facial feature or something.
Yeah. I mean, like if it's a customization option, you're like, hey, like me, I'm not I make interesting characters, not always the most effective, definitely not min-maxed, but they are what they are. And I like playing that. Obviously if it's optional, then the people who like more min-maxed characters or more effective characters won't take it. But yeah, if he's making everybody do it, that's lame.
Well, he's not making everyone do it. The system is making, not everyone, but a lot of the careers take it.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, GURPS has so many skills that have never gotten used, at least in any campaign I've ever run. There's an accounting skill.
That's why I play tabletop games. Do accounting.
Right. I mean, I'm just thinking back to 3rd edition, 4th edition. They've added a huge number of skills. Yeah. There's all kinds of stuff that you can take, and if you go through the book, that's one of the things I say about GURPS is like you have to sit down with a character concept first, because if you don't, it's going to take you hours to come up with character, because you're going to sit there and go through option after option after option, and you're going to go through like 80 pages of skill descriptions and say, "Ooh, what skills do I want to do?" But a large number of them will never come up in a game.
Right.
Wasn't there a Ben Affleck movie where he was the accountant, but he was also like a trained assassin?
Was there?
I think it was called The Accountant.
The Accountant? Yeah. I can't remember if he actually was a trained assassin or if he just ended up being like a badass randomly by movie magic. Like...
He it's like the character was like an accountant for like a mercenary Blackwater group or something, but he turned out to be a badass himself. It was actually a pretty interesting take on things.
Nice.
Christian Wolff, Ben Affleck, is a mathematics savant with more affinity for numbers than people. Using a small-town CPA office as a cover, he's making a living as a freelance accountant for dangerous criminal organizations. I just found it. No shit.
That's the one.
That's
it's actually a pretty good movie. You know, it's it's Affleck, so I don't mind him. I actually like it, but don't get some people started.
I finally saw the what is it? Jay and Silent Bob reboot, or
Oh yeah.
did you see it?
Yeah. Is it the most recent one, or the one that was done like 10 or 15 years ago with the lightsaber thumbs?
No, I think it's the most recent one. It's the one where Kevin Smith lost a bunch of weight. I think
that's
the new one,
that's the most recent one.
Yeah.
I haven't finished it yet. I don't know if I will. I was not.
It's no Clerks, I know. He's sort of like, and I actually like Mallrats too. That was the one that was most aligned. But recently, I think he's lost his mojo somewhere. Maybe Quentin Tarantino picked it up.
I also like, what was the one where the angels and Alanis Morissette played God?
Dogma.
I loved that movie. I thought that movie was hysterical.
It brings up some interesting concepts, and it kind of would be like a great role-playing game, wouldn't it?
It would,
yeah. So everybody's trying to, stop the angel, but you're just kind of ordinary people.
Right, and it had what's the old comedian who died a long time ago now?
George Carlin.
That's because Jesus has to have a little panache. The Buddy Jesus. I used to have a little Buddy Jesus. With the pointy fingers. All right.
I ought to go as Buddy Jesus one Halloween. You and I are going to be the only ones that get it.
I'll go as Kevin Smith. I'll wear a black wig and dye my hair black.
You're going to have to lose a lot of weight.
No, I'll go as old Kevin Smith. All right. Thank you, Nicholas, for the email. I don't know if we agree with you. It doesn't seem like we do.
I seem to remember back in the 80s when I was going to school in Scandinavia, Sweden was a dry country for a while, so I think they're still bitter.
What? Was it really?
That's what I heard. Yeah, they had a whole problem with drunken Swedish, because the suicide rate was so high because it's so dark for many parts of the year that they banned drinking, or at least really highly regulated it. So people would go to Germany and get hammered, and so you'd see these people in suits passed out in gutters, and you're like, what's going on? It's like, oh, it's a Swedish businessman. That's the rumor anyway.
Well, it's like when we went to when we went to Gen Con, Indianapolis. That's a weird place to buy alcohol, because when you go into a liquor store, it's like going into a pot dispensary out here. I mean, it is, because there's like that you got to show your ID, and then they buzz you in, and you go into a room where they keep all of the alcohol, but you can't touch it. There's a counter, and then you tell the person behind the counter what you want, and they get it for you. And then you go outside and pay for it, and I think you have to go back in and get it once you've paid for it. It's really strange. It's very weird. It reminded me a little bit of Utah, but it was weirder. Actually, weirder than the experience of buying alcohol in Indianapolis was weirder than buying it in Utah, which is saying something.
Yeah. Huh.
I don't know.
Yeah, I remember growing up in Portland, it had the same thing. I mean, I remember when I first came to California, and I'm like, you guys have entire stores full of liquor. What the, because usually it was a little place in the corner of the store, and it was highly regulated and you couldn't buy on Sundays, but it was like, you guys had entire supermarkets full of liquor. It was astonishing. Still is.
Yeah, I don't get those blue laws.
Best state ever.
Can you imagine if they did something like that in California? It's like, I'm sorry, you can't buy alcohol after 8 p.m. or on Sundays at all.
Or on Sundays.
Right.
Secede from the nation.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. All right. Giving the players a reason not to fall asleep from bed in Texas. Who would like to read this?
I will read this one.
All right.
Hey, you guys! A long time ago, I sent in a short email. Come on, that's what it is. Come on.
Yeah, Stu and I are old enough, though, to remember the Electric Company, which was Rita Moreno doing it originally. You guys are remembering it from Goonies.
Yeah. I stand by my
Boy,
choice.
Electric Company. That's something I hadn't thought about in a long time. Wow, you don't even know what that is, do you, Kimmy?
Nope, I have no idea what that
Electric Company is kind of like the poor man's Sesame Street.
It was more of a hippie Sesame Street. It was like everybody's in bell bottoms, and it was a little more 70s.
And it had more music.
Yeah, and actually it's where what's his name, the Oscar winner, a couple-time Oscar winner, got his start. Come to me, Morgan Freeman.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
He must have been like 19.
Oh
Yeah,
my
he
gosh.
wasn't very old. Marina Moreno, I ran into an article. This is why it's still in my head. I ran into an article years ago about her. She was having trouble getting work. She was always cast as these Mexican Spitfires. For those who don't know, Rita Moreno did West Side Story, the movie, and she's worked all the time. But she couldn't get work, and she was raising kids and decided to do this electric company thing. And that was her catchphrase, was this with her mixed soprano belting "Hey you guys" and holding it out for a good 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Didn't
Cool.
she? Didn't she play a teacher in Fame? Is that who I'm thinking of? Is that the same person or is it a different person?
That's a different person.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah. She's actually still on. She's on television right now as somebody's grandmother. Some show.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, sorry.
I learned a thing.
Yeah, I'm going to
I
send you a
learned
clip.
Morgan Freeman was once 19.
I'm going to send you a clip of Rita Moreno right now. You can watch it.
It ran from 1971 to 1977.
Oh, all right. A long time ago, I sent in a short email about a movie I love. I ended that email by saying that I would follow up with a series of D&D horror stories about a guy who was bad enough to always be the worst part of every game night, but never bad enough to get kicked out. Over a year later, I'm finally sending in the first chapter in the series. I hope you're entertained. Oh, is this the right one? Okay, yeah. A horror story, part 1.
Dun, dun, dun.
A few years ago, I put together a D&D group at my community college. It was comprised mostly of friends who I knew from high school. One I met at a college gaming club, and a friend of a guy I met, and a friend of a guy I've met from the gaming club. His friend and my friend is the person that my group now calls Fumbles, the Fail Ninja. Nice. He was such a train wreck of a human being that he deserves more than one GM horror story. He gets a series. So, without further ado, Chapter 1 of the Saga of Fumbles the Fail Ninja. Weird character motivation and inappropriate punishment.
Okay, hold on a second. I think
we're skipping one. Did we miss one?
You know what? I copied the wrong email in. Hold on a second. You're reading the third email. Because you'll notice the third email is exactly the same as the second email.
Oh, yes, it is. Well, I'm going to continue reading this, and you fix the third email.
Okay.
Okay.
So
right.
you should probably introduce this as actually a horror story from Ben from Texas.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Let me see.
So this is actually we're just like doing so well tonight, everyone. A horror story from Zach. All right, continuing on. Let's see. Where did I go? Fumbles was a mouth-breathing D&D horror story / GM confessional. Fumbles was a mouth-breathing fat beard. Don't erase that part. That's the part I'm reading.
Oh, I didn't know which copy you were reading.
Yeah,
All right.
Scroll down and delete the third one.
Got it.
This is so interesting, like doing this online. Okay. Fumbles was a mouth-breathing fat beard about 10 years older than everyone else at the table. He seems to me to be the sort of person that you can tell there's something wrong with him, but you can't tell what or to what degree. I shook his hand and started talking about what he wanted his character for session 0. He wanted to play a half-elf druid with a wolf animal companion. That's cool. His wolf would be named Wolf with a U. Not super creative, but sure, not a problem, I thought to myself. We made his character and everything was fine until I asked a question about his character. I asked him what his character's motivation / reason for adventuring was. He said, my character is proud of his elven heritage and he wants to meet, marry, and have kids with an elf. His character's goal was to bang an elf. Seriously, that was it. I explained to him that in this setting, elves weren't uncommon, and the idea of getting the idea of that being your goal doesn't really make any sense as a character's motivation. It's like loving the fact that you are half Asian and making your goal in life to marry an Asian person. And that's like saying in order to marry an Asian, I would join the U.S. military and go fight in Iraq. It's just really weird and nonsensical. Also super fucked up. He said, it's a thing that's important to the character. At this point, I should have put my foot down and said, no, you can't have elf sex as your primary character drive, you dingbat. But I was a new GM and hadn't yet mastered the art of telling PCs no. But I should have seen this as a warning sign and hadn't yet and how creepy and uncomfortable this dude was going to be. How weird was he going to make things? I did not, sadly. And I thought, how do I make this interesting and not weird? How can I make this not suck? I failed. This is where the GM confession comes in. Out of sheer annoyance with Fumbles and his weird character goal, the fact that he would make random decisions that make no sense and piss off the entire table wasn't helping me keep a cool head either.
I'm feeling attacked.
I used his weird character goal to mess with him. I introduced an elf maiden NPC and let him try to court her. Shudders. He rolled a charisma check, which he'd always fail because the dude dump-statted charisma. Druids don't need charisma, he said at character creation. And the elf NPC would show interest in another PC instead, much to the chagrin of Fumbles. This happened 3 times. Rule of threes in comedy. It was funny for the first time it was funny for the rest of the table who knew of this specific weird motivation. And it was more on the innocuous side. I decided that I needed to up the ante and give him exactly what he wanted. An elf that wanted him. This is probably my biggest regret as a DM. I did something that I would never ever do again. In my defense, it was my first time DMing, and I was an edgy college kid with a lot of learning to do. The party fought a drow witch, a character working with a mysterious big bad who had been behind other nefarious actions throughout the campaign. The battle was mostly even, and when things looked bad for the drow, she fled, stealing away the unconscious body of Fumbles, the character, as she left. I pulled him aside and told him this drow matriarch did depraved things to him for a week before he died a torturous death. I made a joke about his character dying of a crushed pelvis. Oh my god. A line I stole from an episode of Futurama. Dark and wrong, I know. X-card violation for sure. Although he seemed to think it was funny and seemed more upset about losing his character than the implications. No character is truly dead at a high enough level, and the party used NPC connections / revival magic to bring back Fumbles' druid character. We should have backleafed him and told him not to he didn't get to play anymore. I stopped messing with him and feeling bad. I stopped messing with him and feeling bad. Introduced an elf maiden that he rescued in the most hackneyed, cliche, sexist trope way, and then blah blah blah. He got his happy ending where he married the princess. Blah blah blah. Boring. The party eventually fought the drow witch near the end of the campaign. When they bested her and cornered her, she exclaimed that she was pregnant with his child. One of the rules I have is if you defeat a villain, you have them dead to rights, and show mercy that it will never come back to bite you. This rule helps curb murder hoboism. He said that she would be allowed to live, but she would have to give up their child to him. She accepted the terms. This half-drow child was then a player character in a second campaign our group played, ran by one of the other players, and that's where the saga will continue. P.S. Consume and imbibe the potable to which you prefer and discuss. P.P.S. Please don't judge me too harshly for my actions here. This is a GM confessional for a reason. It's one of my biggest regrets in my 10 years of RPG experience. I was an edgelord in college and thought it was warranted and the story and fitting for the character without stopping to think it would hurt people at the table. Fumbles wasn't bothered by the turn in storyline, but another player was. The fact that I made a player of my game feel uncomfortable and unwelcome is something I regret. Hope to learn from and never make the same mistake again. X cards and lines and veils rules are a great step towards that. PPPS. Over time, Fumbles is going to fluctuate between a laughable oaf a la Peter Griffin and a villain from the episode of Law & Order SVU. Take your guess as to which he will be in next chapter. As I've titled it, The Saga of Fumbles the Fail Ninja. Stop sending pinup art to an underage girl, you strange man-child. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, without that sort of foreshadowing of the next, with that aside, I think this was a tremendously lost opportunity for character motivation.
Yes.
Because if the player comes to me and says, "I'm an elf and I want to find an elf maiden and get married and have children," then that means that what I'm assuming, at every time they come to a noble elf house, he's going to get cleaned up and go and present himself to the noble, find out if he has any daughters, and put his hat in the ring as a suitor, and spend his time trying to do that. And possibly even getting adventure hooks saying, well, anyone who marries my daughter needs to be extremely brave, and how best can one prove one's bravery? There's a dragon over there on that hill, things like, you know what I mean? And it's now, maybe that's not what this player meant by this. It kind of seems that way, but if a player came to using the words he's using, I would have been like, oh, that's a cool idea. I think that's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, you could turn that into something where, like that, and especially because he's so bad at his charisma rolls and he keeps failing them. Like, that's a fantastic character, a character who all he wants is to charm some girl and fall in love, and he keeps falling over himself and failing at it is kind of a cute character idea. Now, I don't think that that's what the player had in mind with it when he dumped that stat, but I don't know, in the hands of a good person / role player, like, this could actually be a really cute concept.
Yes, I think so. Storky?
Yeah, I was just going to say the fact that at the end he ended up marrying and wanted to get married and such, because at first blush, when we first read this, it comes off as creepy and rapey and not fun at all. And if a GM were to say, listen, if you actively want to court someone to marry, that's something different. But if you're just trying to get it on with an elf, no, X card all the way bad. But you're right, Stu. Again, hindsight's 20/20. In the hands of a better GM with a little more thought, perhaps it would have been an interesting way to make some interesting character choices and a lot of story hooks for the GM.
Yeah, I think.
But again,
it'd be a fantastic motivation.
None of us were very good in college, except for maybe you, and we all made stupid mistakes GMing.
Yeah, I mean, really, like, how many college age guys? Like, there are some out there, but most don't see the falling in love and getting married story as like very interesting.
Most middle-aged guys don't.
Right. So I don't know. I'm glad he owns that what he did was completely wrong, because it's so wrong in so many ways.
Yeah.
Taking the PC's character without talking to him about it first, having ostensibly, even if it was off camera, like rape, like that's like heavy stuff that I would never want in a game, and that's definitely something you should lines and veils and things like that, because that's not.
What's
cool.
interesting is the player character wasn't as offended as some of the other people at the table, which kind of shows, I guess, what this player character was like. So sometimes it's the DM was between a rock and a hard place. And perhaps he made the right call, because knowing the player character is, like Bruce, you can't offend him. Perhaps it was okay with the PC, but the fact that he made other people at the table uncomfortable, that's where it's a squishy gray area. It's right. Hard to please everybody.
Right. Well, and you definitely, if you, like, rape is one of those things that if anybody at the table is uncomfortable with it, you can't have it in the game. Like, it doesn't matter if that PC is okay with it.
How about just not have it in the game at all?
Yeah, like, don't have it in the game.
Don't even ask the question. Would it be okay? No, just get that idea out of your head. Just stop.
Right.
Stop.
Right. Well, because think about it. Like, and there's some sexist tropes in this. It's like, because people are like, oh, okay, so it's a female character raping a male character. So, it's not as weirded out. Where if you'd flipped the genders on this, if it had been a female NPC or PC and a male NPC, like, I don't know, like, you have to be, like, it doesn't matter what the genders are.
No.
But for some reason, this type of thing in stories seems to be, and I've noticed that RPG tables, like, it's more acceptable, even though it's still rape, because it's like, oh, what guy wouldn't want to get laid? It's like, no, that's like super toxic. That's not okay.
Having read some Dritz novels, what they're describing here is a little tame compared to what happens in some of those Salvatore novels,
or even the Robert E. Howard's Conan movie,
right?
Or books.
But I mean,
Definitely.
but this is actually about Drow too.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Dritz, I never read any of the other books, the later books, but I read sort of his origin story books, which all take place in Menzoberranzan, which is the underground city where he was born.
Yeah.
And that,
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think those
dark
novels will get written
matriarchal
today.
society, and that's what men picture in a matriarchal society happening. Not men, but like some men, especially when they're trying to think of the worst things, is like, oh, these women that take what they want all the time. But it's just not okay.
No.
And the difference between a book and a game is like, if you get to a part in a book, you're like, oh, this is gross. I didn't know this was going to be here. You stop the book, and nobody around you knows. You're just like, close, done. Okay, we'll start a fire tonight. It'll be great.
Oh, you have to go on Twitter. You have to go scream about it.
Yeah, that too. But, in a game, it's hard, especially when you're sitting at the table.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even if it's a great, he says that they didn't have any safety tools in place. It was 10 plus years ago, things like that. So at that point, it's like, you're not going to be like the one. It's hard to be the one who's like, I'm uncomfortable with this right now. But it sounds like someone told him later that they were uncomfortable, so that's good. Fine.
Yeah. We used to play without a net all the time, and it never really occurred to us that that safety tool was even an option or that it was needed. And we were a lot of, not edgelord, but we were just a bunch of stupid boys that played stupid characters and did stupid things. And in hindsight, there was necrophilia. It was just awful.
Yeah, of course.
But it was I don't know. It was a different era, and we didn't care amongst ourselves.
Right. Well, and it's something that's only started, becoming a norm in gaming in the last 5 so years, maybe.
Maybe long. I think a little longer than that.
Yeah, but that's like when I really started seeing it at like conventions. You'd go sit at a table and there'd already be an X card there. You wouldn't have to talk about it or ask or worry about it.
Right.
So I don't know. It's good on you for learning and never doing it again.
Yes. But next time, the guy comes in and says, my character, all he wants to do is find someone and fall in love and raise a family. That's a perfectly legitimate story. And you can totally have an adventurous story that happens with that happening as well. Yeah. Those things can totally exist at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of the stories that always sticks in my mind about you, Stu, is that I think you had a superhero game, or maybe it was a fantasy game where somebody decided they wanted to get married. And I think they had a baby as well, and they role-played it out for campaign after campaign.
That was Fred, and Fred actually role-played birthing the baby. He put his feet up on the edge of the table.
You may have left that detail out the last time you talked about it.
He actually LARPed screaming through the labor. Yes. And then his character was a barbarian, and she had a very low intelligence. And she was very flummoxed. And if I recall correctly, she had been an orphan, and she had never been around children before, ever. And the first thing that she noticed is like, oh my God, my child is mute. Because the baby didn't talk. So then she went out and talked to a priest and asked the priest, yeah, my child is struck mute. What do I do? Of course, not seeing the child is actually a small infant is eventually going to learn to talk. It says, well, you should try a vow of, what was it? A vow of poverty. So threw away all of her armor, threw away all of her weapons, got a sackcloth and a stick, and wandered around until the baby turned about 4 or 3 and started to talk, 2 and started talking words. It's like, oh, I want my armor back. He had a great character arc for that character. All right, thank you for the horror story, Zach. And now it's Ben from Texas, and it's in the bottom of the document.
I do like the nickname Fumble for someone who fails at their dice rolls.
Fumbles
the fail ninja.
That's gonna be my clown name. It's Fumbles the clown.
Fumbles.
All right, Ben from Texas. Thanks for reading my email in season 25, episode 18.
Good time.
You asked how I try to make he seems more deadly, so here goes. Kimmy told me not to apologize for my length, but I think a fair warning is appropriate. Never apologize for your length. Quick refresher, I was responding to an email from season 25, episode 11, asking about making D&D more deadly without cheesy crap like rolling to see if you fall down the stairs. I thought this question was getting at one of the most important parts of running a game, which is how to keep the players invested and engaged. In some games, like D&D, the mechanics don't always help reinforce the danger and excitement of a combat. It's tough to be worried about your paladin getting stabbed when you know they can get stabbed 8 more times before they're in trouble. A lot of what I do is just stuff y'all talk about all the time. Most importantly, describe the setting and events in terms of the fiction as much as possible, rather than focusing on the mechanics. The question, what does that look like, needs to be in every GM's toolkit.
Yep.
Also, don't tell them they're fighting a CR3 shambling mound with an AC of 14 and 64 hit points. Describe the ground swelling up unnaturally and lurching toward them with a bestial roar. There's also the sorts of things you talked about, like countdowns and hostages and bystanders. To sum up, it's always a good idea to have ways for the PCs to lose the encounter besides everyone dies, game over, who wants to play Munchkin? Setting up the significance of the encounter in the story really helps too. If your players think they have time to stop and take a nap before they go on the big dungeon boss, you need to give them a reason why they have to do the exciting thing instead of the careful thing. Maybe the dungeon is collapsing. Maybe they have to save their friends NPCs from a necromancer. Maybe they take wandering damage if they stop to sleep under a tree. Sorry, that was me. We had an email years ago about people taking wandering damage if they didn't stay on the GM's prescribed path.
Right.
This also helps with things besides combat. In my last campaign, the PCs set out to retrieve a powerful artifact from a haunted castle at the heart of a long-dead kingdom. I introduced another treasure hunter who was after the same thing, so they were always under pressure to get there before the rival. They even had a tense argument about whether they had time to stop and help a village cursed by werewolves. Anyways, I'll wrap it up. Basically, tell your story in a way that motivates the characters to do something exciting and not take a nap whenever they lose 10 hit points. And also, don't let Stu play an accountant who can't fight anything, at least in D&D. Cheers, Benford, Texas. How did you know he was going to mention accountants?
You know, I pre-read part of this email, but I did not read the last paragraph.
That's amazing.
But that's always been my favorite skill in GURPS is the accounting. He makes a lot of good points. I mean, but part of the problem, especially in high levels in combat, it gets real hard. At some point, I think the players will say, "Would you shut up and stop describing things? Can we get through this combat, please?"
Stop talking to my hit points.
You know, well, not as much that, but like
points.
if you're talking about, you know, like a high attrition combat where you've got a large pool of XP or hit points, and it's that combat's going to last a long ass time. Initially, absolutely, I would totally agree with everything he's saying here. But as things go on, at some point, you're just trying to grind through those hit points. Yep. And at some point, you're just slowing shit down and making combat even longer.
Yeah, especially in D&D. But I still like to pause, like if there's like epic moments, like make sure you're having people describe that.
Oh, sure.
Like, you know, if they roll, you know, a nat 20 or something like that. Or if you're in a system that doesn't have such long combats, then you can definitely take more of those moments. But yeah, there were definitely times, even like as much as we love, you know, describing, making things narrative, there were times in D&D combats where I've just been like, okay, what's its AC? Let's hurry. Let's get through this.
Right.
You know, not because I didn't love the game or wasn't having fun, but sometimes those combats can get to be 6 hours. Like, what was our longest one? It was like...
Yeah, but there were 11 people, and that was a whole other thing.
That was the one where you guys were fighting those controllers that were grabbing you and pulling you away one at a time, and one of them grabbed the healer.
Yeah.
That's the first time as a DM of D&D where I went, hey, I should make sure someone definitely attacks the healer first. And everyone lost their shit.
But I can remember back in the day, we hit upon this revelation, which is instead of saying you're being attacked by a troll, we would describe what it was. And sometimes you get clever because trolls don't all look the same. Some are bigger, some are smaller. So sometimes you would start describing the monster and the people didn't know what it was. Or then they say, oh, it's a troll. It's like, you don't know what a troll is. You're a level 2 fighter. You have no idea what a troll is. Because once people knew what it was, they go, everybody get out the fire. You're like, no, you don't know what a troll is. You don't know that fire is a thing for them.
Right.
So, and you know, you didn't have the monster manual memorized at that point either. So when people would describe things, they didn't quite know what it was. And it made the game so much more interesting because people were no longer just jumping on the immediate solution. Oh, it's a troll, get fire, and we can move on. All of a sudden, they're talking amongst themselves, trying to figure out what it is, trying to how to deal with it. And I think that's a really fun thing to do to your players. You could even take monsters and kind of reskin them, or at least so when you describe it to them, so they have no idea what it is. Because even unconsciously, you're going to metagame. If you know that you're fighting trolls or ogre magi or something that regenerates, you know subconsciously you're going to try things and go, well, maybe they regenerate. or you're gonna end up gaming it for yourself. If you don't know what it is, the combat takes on a whole new dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, totally. And that's the great part about not playing D&D that often, is every time you play D&D, it's like that. You're like, I have no idea what this is.
I have no idea.
I have no idea how to kill it.
We used to collect all these different monster manuals for that very reason, because people would eventually memorize all the monsters. So you'd have to go out. And back in the day, there were all these different... there were the ones that were put out by TSR, but then there were these other ones that were sort of they looked like, badly
Yeah,
made.
I remember stuff like that. People would come out with things that they would have their own game system that was just similar enough that you could use the stats for D&D without having to change anything.
Yeah.
God, I used to have a couple of those things. I don't remember what
Yeah.
they were now, though.
But you got them because you wanted to throw new things at your players, because they had the monster manual memorized and they knew exactly what to do, and so you were like, what can I do to surprise them and make it interesting?
Mm-hmm.
Because it got boring after a while. Like, it seems like a small thing, but it really does make a big difference in what you're playing. All of a sudden, it's like when you're playing WoW for the first time and you come upon something and you don't know what it is. And you're really cautious, and you shoot an arrow at it and you try something, you don't know. Yeah. It's terrifying.
It's red and it's over there.
It's over there.
Kill me.
It's horrible.
I have 14 hit points.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's one of the cool things about like a lot of the online vendors now. There's so many people with Drive-Thru RPG and stuff like that you can go buy. People have created all these monsters and classes and things like that aren't in the manuals. And sometimes that gets really clunky, but it also, as a DM, it gives you a cool advantage because you can go find anything that you want. And a lot of them, your players won't necessarily be familiar with them. So it's kind of a cool resource that way.
It is.
Be careful.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, they came out. Was it the Fiend Folio? What was that second?
There was the Fiend Folio, which I think came from Britain, because eventually TSR had it. In fact, I have a copy of it.
It was produced.
Somewhere.
It was published by TSR. The version I saw was, at least.
Right. It has a big knoll on the cover of it.
Yeah, or something. I don't remember what it had on it.
I got one that was like a sky blue sort of. It was a paper cover, and it had dozens and probably 120 different monsters in there, and it was D&D compatible, but it wasn't put out by TSR.
Right, and they couldn't mention D&D.
No. But there were a lot of monsters in there I pulled out, and some of them were very overpowered. But it was an effort to make the game interesting again.
Yeah. Well, and Kobold Press has their Tome of Beasts and stuff now. There's just a lot of third-party content that you can get. Some of it's actually printed, some of it's just PDF, but
depending on which version of D&D you're using, you could cull from Pathfinder too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I don't know enough. I've never done it personally. When I was DMing, I did fourth edition, and I haven't done 5th edition, but I don't know what I'm sure people know more about it than I do. Write in if you have information on this. But taking a monster from an older edition and just no, it doesn't work.
I don't think. I think they changed.
You'd have to change it. So you'd have to tweak them.
Oh yeah, yeah. Hit point totals I think are going to be lower, generally speaking, in 5th edition. Because I mean, you had your big epic monsters had 1,800 hit points. Like Orcus had 1,800 and some hit points. In 4th edition.
In 4th edition, it was pretty.
I don't think he's even listed in 5th. I don't recall. It's been a long time since I looked in that book.
They still have aboleths, though.
Oh yeah, we have to have aboleths. They're the best.
All right. It was Stu's favorite monster. We never encountered one, thank God.
Right.
I had a friend that was obsessed with the bullets, the land sharks.
Right.
They would appear in every game at least once.
Land shark. Were they knocking the door?
Land shark.
Candygram.
She doesn't know. That's not a candygram. You're a land shark.
Yeah. All right.
We done?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So.
Hey, thank you to EasyRollerDice.com for sponsoring this episode. Go to EasyRollerDice.com/Jax to get their Kickstarter, the aluminum dice with the elven font designs on them. And they've got the stretch goals, they've got new dice cups, and they've also got the aluminum dice cases. So go check it out at EasyRollerDice.com/Jax. And thank you for watching. And I'll play the thing. I'll play here.
Yeah, the thing.
Whoa!
Well, Lester
Thank you for joining us for season 26, episode 11 of Happy Checks RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
My name is Kimmy.
I'm Stork.
And that's it. And we'll see you next Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific Daylight Savings Time right here at happyjacks.org/live. Thank you very much. We'll leave you with a song.
From Michigan to Australia and maybe East Timor, be a trail